everyone. Welcome to the second podcast of the Matchii Experience. It is a bi-weekly podcast about the stories of the restaurant industry that comes out on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Music. Your hosts for today are Timur, Dylan, and Seb. Hi, guys.
Hi, how are you doing?
Hi.
All good, all good. So today, our guest is Kelsey Kilgore, who is a culinary representative at UTSC. We will find out about her transition from a historical education to a culinary job, her work experience, and her tips for culinary students aiming to get into the industry. So I hope you guys enjoy the Matchii Experience.
Take it away, Timur.
Yeah, so they designated me to be the podcast lead. So yeah, I mean, we're going to be dividing questions between each other, but I guess the first question is, kind of an obvious one. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself? So like, what did you used to do? What's your role now? That sort of stuff.
Okay. Yeah. So hi, my name is Kelsey Kilgore, and at present I am the administrative assistant at the Culinary Research Center at the UTSC. I'm also a PhD candidate in the history department at the University of Toronto, so I'm kind of embedded in the university system. But I've also lived two lives, and in between degrees, and really starting since I was a teenager, I've been working. I worked in the restaurant industry in Ottawa and Toronto. So I was a line cook for about 10 years. I finished my tenure in the industry as a sous chef right before leaving to continue my studies.
All right, nice. So what do you like more? Do you like more history, or do you like cuisine more, the kitchen aspect or something?
Oh, geez. Which do I like more? This is a hard question because the more time I spend with food studies, the more I realize how fundamental food is to so many of the historical questions that I ask as well. So on the one hand, I love the academic and intellectual dimensions of studying history, but I really like the physicality of teaching cooking and cooking in general. So that's part of why I continue to do it, even though I was on a different trajectory.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I'm gonna actually start with like a very simple question. So, if you go back in history, do you have like a favorite food, from like the past times, or no?
Right. Well, we used to play a game on the line called, and it was a bit morbid, but it was called Death Row Meal. And so, with new cooks, you try to get to know them a little bit by saying, okay, so you're on death row, you have one meal left. What is your final meal? And you get all kinds of answers. I knew someone who said Cool Ranch Doritos. There was just no further explanation. I mean, that's cool.
Fair enough. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, but for me, for a long time, the answer has been pretty consistently beef bourguignon. And it's just a simple braise. It's one of the simplest dishes, but I like it for its simplicity. But historically, I find it really neat because it sort of comes out of this moment in time in the late 19th century, really starting from the 18th century in France. But by the 19th century, there's this big move towards national identity. So in Europe in particular, nation heads were trying to kind of say, well, what makes us different and special and unique among all of these other communities? And there were things like folk song and art and food was one of the major kind of identifying features. And often simple peasant dishes like braised meats. You have a tough cut of meat, but you cook it for a really long time. It gets very nice and tender. So these dishes were kind of adapted by top tier chefs. And so it becomes something that's incredibly elegant and high end and classy, but it originates in these earlier, very simple, pedestrian dishes. And I like that about it.
Yeah. To be fair, that's kind of a lot of cuisine, isn't it? Like a lot of it does come from like the poor man's table, and then he goes, oh, let's make it high end.
Yes.
So that's kind of cool.
And for very strategic, like political reasons. Often, so.
It's like, oh look, we're like you. We eat the same thing, just it's covered in gold.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess let's step a little bit more into the cuisine part. So could you highlight a certain memory or event that encapsulates the experience of working in the culinary industry?
This question had me laughing and crying at turns.
Oh no.
As I thought about it. Well, the thing is, working in a kitchen is, it's really a mixed bag.
Mhm.
On the one hand, I have wonderful memories of people I've worked with, and of that there's this really special moment of collaboration that happens when you're absolutely completely overwhelmed with orders. You're just like, all right, I'm up to my knees in shits. There's nothing to do but just get through it. And you see people starting to kind of dance almost. We call it the dance, right? It's this space where you don't have to talk to people anymore. You're just knowing anticipating the person's next move. And you're barely touching people, but you're passing by them in really close quarters and with knives and fire. And yet somehow there are very few injuries when you get into that point. So I have wonderful memories of those kinds of, collaborative moments and the communities that I got to be a part of in my time as a cook.
Okay.
Yeah. And then on the other hand, I have memories of the precarity of that work. Working upwards of 90 hours a week and still barely covering rent. I have memories of, unpaid overtime or the loopholes in the industry that didn't work in my favor. So no paid sick days. I have memories of working through bronchial pneumonia 3 times.
All right. Wow.
Because there are no sick days. So, it's a mixed bag.
Okay, but overall, I hope it's good. I hope you're not like, I'm never cooking again.
No.
I'm only takeout, delivery, and all sorts of stuff.
No. Now I don't cook as often at home as one might expect with my background. But that's partly just because after a while, for me the shine is kind of off. I'll make food for other people, but for myself, it's very simple. Plus, I have a wonderful partner who is also a chef. And
all right, nice.
Yeah, so I kind of just enjoy that.
So I guess you can kind of understand the guy who said he wants Doritos as his last meal.
Yeah. I have to say, cooks are notorious for being really poor eaters outside of the kitchen. They can make you, like splendid 5-course meals on, without even really thinking about it. They go home and eat Hot Pockets.
Yeah. Well, I can imagine like you're tired and then also like you don't have the right equipment. Like I don't think anyone at home has like the perfect stove, the perfect knives, the perfect everything. So they just come home ready to make like,
Not on their budget.
No, exactly. Yeah. So maybe that's why as well.
And I think you point to that fatigue, and certainly at the end of the night, like the last thing you want to do is cook some more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So how's that transition been for you? You moved in from culinary industry to being a culinary representative. Okay, first of all, what is a culinary representative at UTSC? What does that mean?
Well, so as the administrator for this research center, I have some very specific kinds of work that I do, and it's part of it is budgetary, it's financial, but I'm also acting as a kitchen manager for the kitchen laboratory space, and in our particular iteration of food studies at the UTSC, that kitchen lab is basically, it's a lab. So it's a form of experiential learning. And my job is to facilitate that. So getting ingredients for students, for courses that work in the kitchen, and sort of helping guide TAs in the process of how to use the space effectively to use food as a teaching tool, right? Because food is multisensory. And to study it then really does require the process of using the ingredients and cooking it and then eating it. So you get to eat your homework, which is pretty great.
Okay, yeah, that's good, yeah.
But in terms of the transition, I've been incredibly fortunate to have had kind of the twinned work experiences of being a student while also cooking. So for me, the transition was really one that I'd been making over many years, which is out of the kitchen and into academic studies more firmly.
Okay.
Yeah. The only thing is that I never anticipated that cooking would become a part of my PhD experience, but I do kind of love it. So it was a really good fit. Okay.
So is that a welcome change? Are you happy with it?
Being out of the kitchen, is that a welcome change?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
good.
It is. As much as I love food and I love the experience of making food for other people and in those professional settings, with those communities, with that subculture. But I found that, between some of the peculiarities of that industry in terms of that precarity that I mentioned earlier, precarity of employment, precarity of living wages, things like that, combined with the physical dimension. As I got older, I found it a little harder to work with a sore back for 10, 11, 12, 17 days straight. So, so yeah, it's a welcome change to be able to apply what I learned in that industry to this other way of approaching food, and hopefully kind of approach that will be useful to other people's studies. And
for the new generation of cooks,
New generation. Well, so the new generation of cooks, to an extent, because our program is not a practical program. It's not a culinary training program.
Yeah. Okay.
But it is facilitating developing those tools for students, or helping students develop those tools. And importantly, I think asking questions using food or about foods that, especially in this pandemic context, have been really, really useful, because we're starting to see some weaknesses in the food system in Toronto, broadly, but definitely in Toronto, that need to be addressed. And this is part of what we do.
All right. Yeah.
So I wanted to ask a question. If you had to describe what the culinary industry is like in Toronto with one word, what would it be?
Right. Precision is key, right? I'd say, I think I would settle on tenacious.
Whoa.
In that it's a really big city. There's a lot going on. There are so many places that, in the before pandemic closures, you could go anywhere. You could try any food from around the world, and you have this sliding scale of international recognition, standards, etc. So you have people opening restaurants every day, knowing full well that this is a precarious industry, that this is a city where there's so much going on that it's a bit of a crapshoot, and they do it anyway, and it's so cool, and I love it. And you have such a wide range of businesses and ideas and peoples all kind of working together in this industry. So tenacious.
Yeah. So do you reckon that's just part of the Toronto culture, or is that just, I guess, you cooks are crazy, you culinary people are crazy, you just want to fight all the time?
Is it both?
Okay, could be both. Yeah. All right.
Well, I think about the GTA very broadly as having all of these wonderful and different communities, that are, you have sort of community enclaves. So they're these sort of like this landscape of restaurants that, on the one hand, you have like the downtown recognized, core, and then you have this whole other landscape of amazing restaurants that don't get talked about as much as they should, that aren't covered in the newspaper articles, that aren't, they're not competitive in the same way, but they're producing such amazing food. And that is, I think, a part of just the city's dynamic, like cities in general, but Toronto is particularly dynamic. Different communities interacting. So I think that is a part of it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really amazing how Toronto manages to have such a big diversity. Like, as an international student, I recognize how there are so many options to find food, and you get to taste different parts of the world. And from your experience, how would you describe the recruitment process? Like, for someone in the culinary industry studying, how would you say that the recruitment process goes?
Right. So that's a really interesting question, because, there, on the one hand, if you're in a practical program and you are studying it, and you get your accreditation, there are opportunities through the institutions that you study at for sort of co-op positions that become internships that become permanent positions, and along the way, in that trajectory, you sort of work on building up your not credits, not accolades, your certifications. There we go.
Mhm.
So, someone who is a trained chef from one of the colleges is more likely to pursue a red seal, for example, than someone like me who just sort of accidentally showed up in the industry one day and really liked it. So I just kind of stuck around and learned as I went. So, you have that more professional the more professional line of recruitment. And then you have, I think, what makes up more of the recruitment process in Toronto, which is a rather informal kind of either word of mouth or just, based on the stage.
Okay.
So, sorry, more?
No. I just said okay. Sorry.
So, you have, people working in restaurants and recognizing, oh, well, this person is ready to go. And not always for negative reasons. Often it's just to expand their own knowledge base. They want to try somewhere new, learn a new cuisine, learn how this different place does that same cuisine. Like there are people who are passionate about it, want to learn as much as they can. So they move from place to place.
Oh, okay. So it's not like, I'm trying to go for promotions like, oh, I'm making, I don't know, Italian food. I want to know how to make French food. And you move like to a different restaurant. So it's more like that.
It depends on the person. It depends on the trajectory. Both are viable options. Yeah. And I think that the more institutional method, through the schools and then often the schools place people in co-ops in larger institutions like hotels, for example, in which case you absolutely need your red seal. And in that framework, you do want to build up those promotions and kind of work your way up to management. And for some people, that's just not what they want, because the moment you get into management, you're not cooking actively in the same way. You're overseeing, not on the line, producing food in the same way. So, if that's the route you want to take, if that's what your goal is, as sort of long-term promotion building, then there are ways to do it. And then there are the cooks who don't want to do that, and they are the ones who kind of migrate from place to place. And it's like, okay, well, I know everything that I think I need to know right now about this cuisine. I've never worked with this other cuisine, so I'm gonna get my buddy, I'm gonna go there and I'm gonna get them to call my chef, and my chef will tell them that I'm a good worker, and they'll give me a chance. And I think that it's really, ultimately it comes down to the stage, which is your chance. So your resume can be amazing. You could have the most pristine CV, but if you go onto that line and you can't handle yourself, you can't do basic tasks, you can't, work with the team, then they're probably not going to be offered a position. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like in most industries, isn't it, though? Like you can be very good, the theoretical person, get all the best grades, and then you get in and you panic, and then you forget what the knives are, and you start, I don't know.
Don't throw the knives. That's the background on that. Universally.
I've seen a lot of TV shows where like the chefs are insane. They just throw things at people, and so that's not a normal thing. Is that?
Having been on one of those cooking shows, I can tell you that's not a normal thing. They cultivate that, they encourage it, but not in real restaurants.
Ooh, actually, okay, so that's perfect. So you've been in a cooking show?
Yes.
Oh, all right.
Nice.
Yes. So as I was getting started, I had the opportunity to help open a restaurant in Ottawa.
Okay.
And one of the provisions in the contract was that I had to be a part of this filming process. And it was a show on the W Network about the couple that was opening the restaurant, because they were, two bureaucrats from Ottawa are opening a restaurant for their love of, wait for it, gourmet vegan food.
Oh my God.
Okay. Shockingly though, really, really good. And I still follow the chef from that restaurant because her recipes are amazing. It's all Japanese cuisine based. So it's not vegan in the sense of like, let's fry up some tofu and make it look like a chicken nugget, which I can respect, but this is different. This was a totally different thing. So we had, so I was trying to open this restaurant. And so for the first 6 months, I had a boom in my face at all times trying to do basic knife work.
Oh, wow.
I was still fairly new too, so I didn't always know what I was doing.
You were learning on the job with like a big audience watching you.
Yeah, and this is the thing, like they, the shows encourage more drama than there usually is.
Okay, yeah.
So like hey, why don't you use this large cleaver to cut that turnip? I'm like, I know that's not right, but I feel like you want me to use it for entertainment value. So I'm going to go with this.
Okay.
Because we've talked to a couple of chefs and we found that there's a common misconception about people thinking that the industry is more related like those shows, and in actual life that sometimes tasks are repetitive.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is a common misconception. And one that I think, at least in the early 2000s, when I was first coming up, it seemed to draw a lot of people into culinary programs, so you'd get all these young cooks who were trained, absolutely, but went into the kitchen space expecting this like super dynamic thing. And I said, okay, here's this bucket of shallots, enjoy. Was them all.
Nice.
And so it's, it is repetitive, and that is something that has to be contended with, as you're considering long-term work in a kitchen. And I mean, that's part of why people go to other kitchens, right? Is to freshen
To find
things up
to find that perfect work environment, I guess.
Yeah, and to just shake it up a little bit. Like you can brunoise shallots anywhere, so you might as well pick places that serve other parts of your own learning.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. So have you ever had? Oh, sorry. Go on, Dylan.
Just a question. Just to follow up on Sebastian's point. Obviously, staying motivated in a lot of different industries is going to be an issue. But in particular, when we did our research, it's been said that in the culinary industry, that's going to be a bit of a problem, and that's why the turnover is relatively high. I was wondering, just based on your experience, you mentioned previously of the show and all of your past shenanigans with the cutting and all that stuff. I was wondering, how were you able to stay motivated? And would you say that staying motivated in a culinary industry is tough, or is it manageable, or how would you describe it?
So in terms of staying motivated as a cook, I do think that a certain amount of mobility is a part of it. So as an employer, someone who's trying to get a stable staff, there are things that they can do that, work to an extent. But, that there is also just that desire to learn. So it's tricky. It's hard to say because it really does depend on what your cooks are wanting out of their cooking experience or out of their professional experience. So, in terms of employers motivating cooks to stay, I think that there are some systemic changes that need to be made in terms of job security and, rate of pay, benefits, things like that. And in terms of, just personal motivation, the day to day, I mean, this is why revolving menus are really useful because, every season you change up the menu. So you got bored doing that last set of repetitive tasks. You're going to do more repetitive tasks, but different ones. So, it changes it up a little bit.
Okay.
And I think a lot of it does come down to a lot of the motivation to stay in a particular place does come down to the community within it. So if you're working with a really good crew, if you're working with people that you work well with, then you're more inclined to stay.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say you were making your own restaurant, let's say someone invested millions of pounds into your restaurant or millions of dollars. I don't know what you guys use in Canada. I live in the UK, so I'm not sure. Canadian dollars, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I know a little bit, see? So let's say you're making your own restaurant. First things first, what's your cuisine?
Oh, okay. Yes. So, I mean, I'm going to probably go with like medium scale comfort foods based on the market right now.
Oh yeah, that's it. The comfort foods are very in season right now.
And I know that it's possible to do them really well, and to do them economically, but in ways that even just the presentation of them makes a huge difference, right? And I can't make any claims to any specific cuisine because my own training was so haphazard in some ways and so multi-restaurant related. Like I don't have a cuisine that I have mastered. I can do a little bit of everything. So, it's going to be already a fairly, a varied set of menus.
Okay. Yeah. And so now you're building your kitchen. how would you make sure, because you didn't mention about like the systematic changes, would you have some systematic changes you want to implement? Like what kind of things would you do to make sure that your workers like, you know what, I want to work for Kelsey, I want to work at this food place?
Well, for in terms of systemic changes, I would follow the lead of my last chef, actually. Yeah, it's, in terms of the operating costs of a restaurant, you're running on a razor thin margin of profit. And this is the problem. Part of the reason restaurants like to serve alcohol and up their rates is because that's what makes the money. Every year that the food index comes out, it gets more and more expensive to run a restaurant. So, and that's before you even consider paying, a $15 minimum wage. That's before you consider, signing your staff up for health benefits.
So why is that? Why is that increasing like that?
Why are food costs increasing?
Yeah.
Food costs are increasing partly because of global warming.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I was thinking like maybe there were like some, more rules, maybe more strict, like where you get the foods. So maybe I was just thinking.
No, and I mean, I've been out of the industry for a while, so I'm not up to date on the policies there. But from my experience, even just within those 10 years, every year, the majority of produce just goes up and up and up, and up because it becomes more expensive to produce it, right, and to ship it, and then by the time it makes it to us as the middleman for the consumer, it's already more expensive than it was before.
Yeah. So basically, the best and most cost-effective restaurant is a bar.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Fair enough.
100%.
Fair enough. Yeah. All right. Okay. So continue with your systematic changes, please.
So one of my chefs, the last chef I worked with, was a real inspiration to me because she somehow made it work. I've only had 2 chefs that prioritized staff wellness, I suppose, or staff security, more than their profits. And I think as a result, they got a lot more out of their staff. They definitely had staff staying there for, 5 years, 10 years. And you had people that had been, I'm trying to think of the longest lasting person. I think we hit about 10 years, and then people just, might get bored or get, older and not wanting different things for their lives, but also physically it's a hard job to do. Yeah. But that was always a priority for this particular chef I have in mind. And that was, as simple as double checking with people before scheduling. That was, talking them through what it means to have, a certain amount taken off your paycheck to go to your health benefits, working with the crew to find a plan that worked for the majority of people. So there's at least something. Because I know that when I finally left the industry for good, the first thing I did at the university was empty out my insurance because I hadn't been to the dentist in 7 years.
All right. Just no time.
No, there's no money.
All right.
If you don't have the health benefits, there's no coverage, and dental work is extremely expensive.
Okay.
So,
yeah. Well.
Making the job more livable is a great way to keep staff. It boosts morale, but it also, it makes it a real job that you commit to in a way that I don't think is the case for a lot of cooks right now. It's precarious. So why wouldn't you leave? Is once if it stops being fun, you go somewhere else. Yeah,
because it's quite crazy because like in a lot of industries, you do have the people like that work in the same company for 20 years, 25 years, and it's not abnormal. It's like, It's because when I did my placement in Jaguar, there was some people that, he graduated, went straight to this job, and he's been there for like 30, 40 years, and no one's like, whoa, you're doing really cool. They're like, no, it's normal. So that's not a thing that typically happens. You don't have a person that's like, he was raised on this street in Toronto, and then he joined this restaurant and he worked there his whole life and then retired.
Well, you'll see that more in the kind of the professional streams or the more institutional streams, definitely. So people who train and then go into hotels and rise to the ranks, and they'll stay.
Right. Okay, that's kind of cool, yeah.
So, but, I mean, it's one of the draw factors in some ways. Like again, depending on the cook, it's the idea of not in an institution, man. Like we're not working in an office.
It's not a job; it's a passion. Yeah.
Exactly. And so when I say systemic changes, I don't like owners can do one part of it, But it also comes down to shifting cultures within the industry itself. And that, we'll see what happens with the pandemic, because that might make some of those shifts happen.
Yeah, well, it's definitely a big shake, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, no, the cooks that I'm still in touch with are not really doing well as a result of all of these lockdowns.
Sad.
Well, I was going to ask, and this is going to be a bit of a fun one, but we came across your video on YouTube. It was the poisson. I can't it's French. I don't know how to say it properly.
It's a proper French, easy. Another good example of a peasant dish.
Okay. Yeah, it was a fish. It was a steamed fish, I would assume is what it was. And I was wondering, because as we all transition into the pandemic, one way or another, to cut costs, we got to start learning how to cook. But as someone who just barely cooks, I couldn't make like a fried rice if I tried my best. The best dish that I ever made to date was like mixing chips with spaghetti bolognese and like an oven baked chicken. And while it tasted amazing, because like I actually made something that I was proud of, I was just wondering, like, where do you get the inspiration to make different types of dishes? And like, as someone who religiously cooks every day, where do I get the inspiration to suddenly make poisson, like the fish? Or where can I make a inspiration to like make a very beautiful dish, per se, if you understand the question?
I do. And I just want to preface it by saying your dish sounds amazing.
Oh, thank you.
That right there is inventive. It's creative. It's a creative use of what you have. So, you can come and make staff meal anytime.
Yes.
Staff meal is where, the cooks kind of show off for each other, but it's also a way of cleaning out the fridge. So that kind of dish actually shows up in restaurants, just not in the front of house. That's what the cooks eat. So you're already halfway there. So as I mentioned earlier, cooks are notorious for eating poorly. We'll go out to restaurants and support our colleagues in the industry, but at home, it is as simple as, what do I have in the fridge? That's got mold. You'd scrape that off. Okay, I've got this, I got this, I got this. All right, you know what? I'm just going to use the principles that I know, like this tends to go with this. I know that I can probably fry this thing, but I'm going to want to bake this thing and assemble it. So, in terms of like feeding yourself, it can be really helpful just to learn some of the basic techniques. Like what is frying versus, steaming versus what are some of the different ways I can use the things in my fridge. And, one of the benefits of this big virtual pivot is that there's a ton of stuff online now. I mean, there's a ton of stuff with cooking before, but now it's like really pointed for the pandemic pantry. How do I make food when I have nothing? I can't get to the grocery store. How do I do this? So I would urge people to, do a little searching around. But in terms of my own eating habits and my own approach to it for me comes down to kind of like old school principles of health and food. And here I'm going to like put on my historian hat and be a big nerd. But, in ancient cultures across, I'm going to focus more on like the old world, quote unquote. Eating and health were inextricably linked. So you have like ancient Chinese medicine, you have Ayurvedic medicine, you have Galen's humoral theory. All of these systems basically say, okay, well, what do you want to eat? You know what? How do you feel? Okay, so that's a place to start. So if I'm feeling cold and I need something warm, then I'm going to look at things that are like stews or, heavy foods. If I'm feeling just kind of like, peckish, I'm going to lean towards lighter foods and maybe lighter methods of cooking, like, more of a quick pan fry or a quick saute or a steaming, so I decide what to eat through sort of a process of what do I have? How do I feel? And what tools can I use to make, to make that meal fit my mood and my fridge? Yeah.
Okay. So do you think well, social media, do you think that's like a very good place to actually learn how to cook, or would it be more something that you just kind of okay, I'm just trying to process it better. Would you learn how to cook by following like this online recipes, or are you just like you can just make food? I don't, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that there is a lot of mythologizing around the difference between a cook in a restaurant and someone cooking at home. You know, what makes a cook is whether or not they sort of understand enough about the basics of not even necessarily the whole cuisine, but like the dish that they're doing, that they can make it not just once, but they can probably make it more than once. And I think that, you know, that line between cooks and you know, home cooks is as much, it's a fabrication in some ways. And it's one that the industry encourages, and certainly, you know, in terms of like self identity as a cook, it's useful to have that sort of sense of, well, you know, I'm the cook, I can do X, Y, and Z. But really, there's the kinds of informational videos that are available now are such that all you have to do is practice it, and it comes down to the, you know, the practiced motor skills.
Okay. So would you say like the differences between like a chef and a person like me who's just like has a, you know, a list of things I like to cook that I found on YouTube? So would the difference be that I'm just following someone else, but a chef is capable of, like you said, using the basic principles or some other principles and goes, oh, you know, I saw I have a tomato in the fridge, and then I saw I have, I don't know, pasta in the fridge. Let me make something different. While I would be just like, cool, chop here, chop there, throw it all. Technically, it's following the recipe, but at the same time, is it? So would it be just like a chef would be able to create a masterpiece while we just, you know, put the IKEA furniture like this of a dish?
Well, I kind of like that analogy.
Build your own food at home. Build your own food at home, yeah?
Yeah, build your own, your home kits. Well, and actually, just as an aside, like there are a lot of home food kits that are exactly that. It's a way of enabling you to participate in the process that a chef goes through without having to have the experience and the built skill, right? And the built know-how. And so, like, on the one hand, I do think that there's something very particular about what a chef does, even different than what a cook does, right? Like a line cook replicates and has to be good at being able to replicate. And through that, you learn how certain things cook, what goes together, those tools, those techniques, you build that. But yeah, chefs see food and experience food in a way that is beyond in some ways. But in terms of being able to make something imaginative and flavorful, like Dylan, your dish, you know, I think that you know, well, maybe with like the right plating, we'll revisit the plating, because that sounds an awful lot like a dish that my dad's mom used to make for him growing up. You know, there is a distinction, I think, about, you know, what chefs do, but cooking itself is not mysterious. And I think everyone is capable of cooking good food. It is just about the practice of it. So, you know, read an article saying, oh, well, you know, if you have a piece of pork in your fridge, one way you can think about how to make a really good meal is to say, okay, well, what do pigs eat? You know, start there. If they eat together, they go together. Or if they grow together, they go together. That's it. You know, and just practicing techniques. Try flipping stuff in a pan. You're going to mess it up a bunch of times. But eventually you're going to get.
I don't think so. I don't think you want me to do that. No.
Just have like the drop cloth to start. But
well, like just put the whole kitchen in like, you know, cellophane, just you know, just in case.
Shrink wrap it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Love it. Yeah. So fear not. Everyone can cook.
Okay, that's good.
Oh, sorry.
Is you okay, Seb?
No, I was remembering some experiences of me cooking. Dylan might remember that in first year I turned on the fire alarm like 4 times.
Oh, but it's the timer. It's the timer. It's okay.
Yeah, no, it's like a little bit of smoke came out, and I was like, oh, there's no fan. So I didn't want to turn on the fan a couple of times because I would cook at 6 a.m. So I turned on the fire alarm one time, but I wanted to ask a personal question. Like, not so. What do you think? Right now, the world is digitalizing more, and when we've talked to restaurant owners, we've seen that the industry itself resists to change. There's a lot of things that have remained as in traditional methods. Do you think it would be a good time to start a YouTube food channel if you have the skill, like now during the pandemic, that people consume more hours of content online? What would you recommend it, and would you do it?
Well, in terms of creating more virtual content or more digital content, I do. I mean, that's one of the things that I've been doing in my role at Culinaria is to be producing some content in cooperation and collaboration with student groups. We're trying to build sort of a library of content. Now, in terms of restaurateurs, I do think that this is a time where, if you're going to do it, this is the time, because you have an active audience, you have a captive audience. But I mean, it's an investment, not just in, not just the equipment, but I think the skill set, right? Especially when you think about how much effort and time goes into specialized training to become a chef. That's time that's not spent on these other digital skills. And so, in the same way, like anyone can film, anyone can film content in the same way that anyone can cook. You'll have some people that are naturally better at it, but as long as you understand the principles, you can do it. And it's something that I think would be a worthwhile investment of some of that time and some of that money. If nothing else, it gets your name out there. For example, there's a channel that my partner watches, a restaurateur in Lima, in Peru, who that's where he's from. So he just like nostalgically watches it. But we're going to this restaurant when we can, because this guy lost his actual physical restaurant. So he built this bar behind his house, and he makes the most amazing food. And his whole demeanor is like a little bit of showmanship, and mainly just being really excited about his own cooking. It makes it really consumable content, and that's going to get more people to consume his content when they're in person and actually eating his food. So
do you know the name of the restaurant by any chance? Because I'm from Lima, so I've explored most of them. It's okay.
Wait, did you say you're from Lima?
Yeah, I'm Peruvian.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so no, but I can describe him. It's like an older guy I'd say in his 50s. He just has like a big smiling face, and his son helps him. So the two of them are always like, oh, buenazo, buenazo. It's like I can tell that he's listening to that channel because of how the food is described.
Yeah,
but I'll look it up for you because it's a good channel.
Please do. Yeah, in Peru there's a lot of diversity. I love the food. I made lomo saltado actually yesterday.
We my partner and his brothers built a burner in the backyard. So we're like in the middle of the snowstorm with the burner and the wok making lomo saltado.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it was really fun.
You should try ceviche if you can get.
I love ceviche. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, with the proper corn and the onions. Yeah.
If you mix the ceviche with jalea mixta, which is fried fish, goes perfect.
Oof. Yeah. If you haven't yet, there are lots of places in Toronto, less in the downtown, but like where I am in Oakville, there's a place called Matchii Experience, which is kind of.
Yes, I ate the rotisserie chicken, pollo a la brasa. I think it's either Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursdays. I'm not sure. They have it like one day a week. They have rotisserie chicken.
Yeah. No, my partner used to be a cook there.
Wow.
All right, wow.
Yeah, in the know. Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, you definitely missed an opportunity to like start your own YouTube channel. That would have been a fun experience to just see like you guys setting it up, seeing this snow falling, and you're just kind of struggling and cooking.
We have video. It's we're just gonna have to talk his mom into sending it to us. She it's made the rounds.
Okay. Show it to all the family.
Yeah. Really impressive.
All right. I think we just have a few more questions. Just I think they're a bit more lighter and more fun. I mean, it does say here fun questions, so
I see that.
So the first one is so let's say we blindfolded you first of all, and we gave you two dishes. They're exactly the same. Well, exactly the same, but one is made by a professional chef. He's Michelin star, and one is made by me. We let's say follow the same recipe, and then we put it in front of you. Would you be able to tell which one's which, and how would you be able to tell?
Right. So the blindfold definitely puts a bit of a twist on this, because one of the main markers of something that say Michelin star is about the presentation and the ambience.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I said blindfold, because I see all this, TV shows, and I was like, oh yeah, you have to align this way, and I'm just like, nah, just throw on the plate, and as long as it's edible and looks all right, it's okay.
Yeah. Well, okay. So could I be able to tell? It depends, because there are some food, like there is a way of there's a way in which high-end sort of Michelin star, there's a refinement there that sometimes is a trade-off with like just gusto, like really tasty food. So in some ways I don't feel confident that I could tell the difference. And there are some ways that I think I might be able to tell the difference, but in the end, I don't think that high end means higher quality.
Okay. I think you're just assuming that I'm a good cook, so thank you for that, I guess. But...
Oh, you're welcome. One thing that does tend to stand out in restaurant food versus home food is seasoning. The way that salt is employed in particular in restaurants is it's a little more, it's with a little more confidence than I think a lot of home cooks use. So there's a sort of a very liberal use of salt.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Okay. And it's not excessive, but it is understood as being an enhancement. And so it's used in the same way that fat is used in restaurant food. It's about taste. It's about, the flavor over any considerations of health.
Okay. All right. Well, because I did hear like this thing. I don't know. When I was growing up, someone told me that if you go to like a nice restaurant and they make you a plate, they put it on the table, and then you go, "Can I have some salt?" That's like a big insult to the chef, because the chef knows exactly what like should be in the plate, and if you don't like it, just leave. Is that like kind of true, or to some extent true?
It's a little bit true. It's certainly, it is not the case that every single plate that goes out is perfect all the time. As much as we would love to think that's as cooks. No. So it is considered polite to at least taste the food before requesting any additional condiments. Yes, but you can be kicked out for that. That's the thing with higher end foods, like sort of high scale or upper scale restaurants, is this kind of assumption of a kind of palate that is eating, and so I don't know. I think between that and then needing to regiment the actual process, sometimes you lose out on the flavors. So sometimes you do need a bit of salt, but it's best to try first.
Fair enough. Yeah, because I was always scared. When I go and I feel like something's a bit under salted, I was always scared. I'm like, you know what? The chef knows best. The chef knows what I like. So let's just play it safe.
Well, you should. I don't like that part of the culture where there's a shaming of people who don't know that, because I do know that everybody can cook.
Okay.
Everyone has the ability to cook, and there's no shame in not having there's this whole question about like a refined palate, and like taste is something that you do, but it's also this sort of like social category that I don't think is a very fair way of approaching things.
Okay.
But sometimes you'll have one thing under seasoned because something else is more heavily seasoned, and they're meant to be complementary.
Okay. All right. Yeah, fair enough.
Never feel ashamed to ask.
Huh?
Oh, I said just never feel ashamed to ask.
Okay. Yeah. No. Were you saying something, Dylan?
No. Sorry.
Oh, no, sorry. I thought I was going crazy. Yeah, it's because my friend was telling me a story how he went to Italy and he ordered a pasta dish. It was like I don't remember what it was, but I remember it was seafood pasta. And he asked for Parmesan, and the waiter had a heart attack. He's like, "No, you don't put." Oh, please, no. Is that really bad?
Well, it depends on the dish. Like if the sauce is meant to be sort of a cream sauce, then that's fine. But if the sauce is meant to be sort of lighter oil based and it's leaving dairy behind entirely, generally dairy and seafood aren't.
Okay.
In theory, they're not supposed to go together, but there's so many dishes where it's amazing. So,
Okay. Well, I guess it's just a little bit of a, the simple Russian mindset. You see pasta, you put cheese, easy, no worries. Don't care what it is. Yeah, to be fair, it is. Are you ready for the last question?
Sure.
Hopefully it wasn't too long. So obviously you do stuff at the university. You teach fellow, I guess, not chefs, but you teach like people to appreciate cooking. So if you were to leave a tip for future culinary students to succeed in the industry, what kind of tips would it be?
Right. Well, I mean, in terms of students who are doing a practicum, so like in the, people who are training at places like Centennial and George Brown and Humber, and I'm sure I'm leaving out a couple, but those are the three the three ones that I know. I mean, my advice would simply be to have a plan. This kind of fly by night fun subculture with being in your early 20s and working a job where you're working the opposite of everyone else's schedule. You're working with people who are like-minded, and nothing else is open at the end of the night, so everyone goes and has parties together till all hours. That's a part of what is available, but it's good to have a plan for your own career. So if this is something you want to do long term, then you need to approach your cooking in that way. And maybe that means, and I hate to say this in terms of the question of job longevity and for employers looking to recruit long-term cooks, maybe the best career plan does involve moving from place to place to learn as much as you can, but having some kind of plan in place for either the long term or what you're going to do after you stop working in the industry can go a long way, because it is an industry that is very hard to leave sometimes. There's just a way of being as a cook that is very compelling in a lot of ways. And so it becomes hard to leave. And when you try to, find that you have to then do a lot of work to build up whatever comes next for you.
Yeah. So it's kind of like a lifestyle as well.
Very much so. Okay. Yeah, at least in my experience of it in 2 North American cities, 2 Canadian cities, it is as much a lifestyle as it is an occupation. It's where the passion meets the professionalism, right? So and the industry itself is kind of designed to encourage some of that. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I actually have a bonus question. I'm sorry, it's like a small one, so don't worry. So last podcast, I asked Aaron about, so he owns a restaurant, and I asked him about, would he hire me if I was a very good, do you know a game called Overcooked?
Wait,
Overcooked. Do you know it?
No.
No?
I'm no longer hip.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, it's not a new game, but so basically the pretense is like, you need to play with your friends. There's a lot of dishes. It's pretty simple, someone chop tomatoes, someone cook pasta, that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's very hectic. Like the whole point is things are meant to burn and you're meant to kind of frantically run around the kitchen. So it kind of simulates that.
Yeah.
So if I was very good at it, let's say I beat all the levels, I'm amazing. Would you hire me just based on that? Or would you reckon I still need to have some education behind it?
Oh, okay. I would be open to hiring you based on performance in a game.
Okay.
I mean, in the end, it comes down to the stage, because I've hired people who have had zero experience, but they were willing to learn. They were hard workers, and they ended up being like 2 of the best cooks I've had, 2 of the best cooks I've ever worked with.
Okay.
Because you can teach taste, you can teach, process, but if you have to want to find someone who's willing to put in the work.
To actually work.
Yeah. So if you can try it, I was going to say, if you can get through your stage without cutting yourself, you're probably hireable. Having said that, I actually, this one right here was from my first stage ever. So somehow I managed to get the job.
Yeah, I don't think I'd get it then. I I cut myself a lot. I'm very reckless with knives, which is bad.
Well,
Yeah.
just keep them sharp, because if you're
Yeah,
gonna
that's
cut
the thing.
yourself,
That's the
better
thing.
to
I
have it
always
sharp.
sharpen them after I cut myself. So
Yeah.
that's how I remember. I go, oh no, that shouldn't have happened. Sharpen it.
Yeah, I never cut myself on knives anymore. It's always dumb things like peelers. They're the
Oh
worst.
yeah, they're the worst. Peelers are scary.
Yeah, they really, really are.
Right. Well, I guess that's it. That's all the questions. Guys, do you have anything else you want to ask, or maybe you want to ask us something? I don't know.
Well, I'm really, I just want to jump in here and just say that this is a really great initiative, I think, that you've put together. There are some serious questions that are being raised as a result of the pandemic. And I think that, the direction that you're taking and the kinds of questions you're asking, not just of me and of people in the industry, but that, that your company is asking by existing, it's really good. And I think that this is place where we need to start going as an industry. So kudos. This is great.
All right. Thank you very much. That's very
Thank
nice.
you.
Right. Well, I hope you enjoyed this chat with us.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming.
My pleasure.
So I hope you guys enjoyed our conversation with Kelsey Kilgore and found it both entertaining and educational.
Here at Matchii, it is our mission to help small businesses prosper through these tough times, hoping that by engaging with different industry experts, we will help you with your problems as well.
Make sure to follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And for more information, visit Instagram if you want to be featured on, or comment on the YouTube section. Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys. I hope you enjoyed the Matchii Experience. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.